What's up guys, Americana back here with another video. So we lost $98,000 on the weekly time frame. What do we do now? There's a few different ways to manage this, and the situation is going to be different for everybody based on when you entered the market, how much you own, and what your risk appetite is. So just watch this video to the end, weigh out the scenario, and do what's best for you. Let's get into the video. All right guys, there is a couple different things you can do. I'm going to try not to talk about in this video, potentially where we're at if we're in a bear market. We cover that in other videos this week, as well as there's still some good signs in the market. There's still bullish dynamics at play if we do get a reclaim or something of that nature. So we'll kind of discuss that reclaim a little bit in this video today. But when it comes to what dynamics kind of make me more hopeful for a reclaim and things like that, make sure you check out my other videos. This video is strictly going to be like, what are your options now that we've lost a key level? What can you and can't you do? How should you operate? What should you expect? Maybe what scenario is going to work best for you? So the first one, I feel like the most obvious, okay, is selling. Just instantly letting go. If you're somebody who maybe recently bought crypto, or you bought the top in altcoins in January of 25, just depending when it was and what coin. Bought the top of Ethereum in July or something like that, and you're just looking for quick gains. Oh, I'm going to do this crypto stuff because it's about to break out, or I can make quick money or whatever. Then maybe just exiting and accepting the loss is best for you, and waiting for a reclaim. The other reason for just letting go instantly would be just you can't handle it emotionally. It's too much emotionally for you. You've gone through too much. You're fed up. Enough is enough. And you're just ready to let go. Again, you can still get in on a reclaim of $98,000. So that's still an option to jump back in. But you prevent yourself from having to deal with further downside potentially, however low that's going to go. I mean, it's not going to go straight down. We're due for a bounce at some point. Even in bear markets, we get bounces, and it's ideal to exit into that strength. But at the same time, if you're okay to just accept the losses and you want to be done and you want to walk away, it's not the worst time to do it, and you can still kind of wait around for a reclaim, just preventing yourself from any further downside and sitting on your hands for higher if we are still to get it. Again, check out my other videos for that. All right, I mentioned the reclaim. I've talked about it before. Typically with anything for confirmation, you want to see 2 weekly candles, under a certain level, because you can always bounce back above the next week. That would be called a reclaim. This happens more times than I think people care to accept or care to talk about. So just looking at this range from, this is March to October of 24, kind of print this range low, right? We sweep it. We actually close the week below it. The next week, we get back above. This week, we just sweep, we close above, no issue at all. And then into the, capitulation of this range, we close a weekly close below that line again. I guess now you could say maybe the range has shifted down just slightly, but just for this example, we'll call it like this, right? But again, reclaimed the next week, and trend is allowed to continue. If you are going to get a reclaim, it's as if it almost never happened. Same thing working on the reclaim. Once you do reclaim, you need another weekly close, above that line to really lock in that reclaim as well. But it is fully a possibility, especially with some of the dynamics we have at play, if those continue to play out, right? At least long enough for me personally, it's like, all right, I'll sit around and watch for another week, however long, and see what I need to do if we can't get a reclaim or things like that. All right, so what are your options if you are going to wait for a reclaim? What should you know? What are you kind of exposed to? What can you expect? There's a few different ways to play the reclaim or to play a potential bounce or things like that. I guess first of all, what you do expose yourself to, right, is obviously, again, continued downside, right? If we are meant to go lower before we get a bounce, you do open yourself up to that, right? And you kind of have to be okay with like, hey, I'm waiting out for a reclaim. Let's say we don't even attempt to reclaim. We just go down, right? Anticipating some sort of bounce to retest this breakdown level. And then right there is when you would do your swift exit from the market. So this is what you open yourself up to the downside. And I guess technically speaking, it's not likely that Bitcoin goes in a straight line down, but however much that downside is going to be is not determined. It doesn't have to bounce here, even though that's a likely place for it to, but something to keep in mind and consider. At the same time, what are the benefits of this? Well, we still have, like I said, certain dynamics in play. If we are to get a reclaim this week, if we are to get a bounce above, right, and confirm, right, it's likely one of these moments. And we've talked about what dynamics are at play for us. So if Bitcoin dominance is going to continue lower and Bitcoin is going to destined to continue higher on some sort of reclaim, well, it's pretty likely that we get exactly what we expected when it comes to alt season, when it comes to blow off tops, fork moments, collapsing dollar, Ethereum dominance on the rise, total 2 breakout, all of those things. So you still remain exposed, again, if you are going to wait around and wait for the end of the week for a reclaim. At the same time, if you're somebody who is going to wait for a reclaim, within this group is somebody who's just going to instantly sell on a backtest of 98K. Whether we come down first and then backtest or go straight into it and backtest, somebody who's just letting go at 98K, which is another possibility as well. So the advantage that they have over somebody who is going to wait for the reclaim is this thing could retest on Monday or Tuesday. Those people looking for 98K would exit, and then it ends the week down here. So definitely something to keep in mind. Again, you want to know your risk and things like that. I'm a little bit hesitant to bring it up because it is going to be different for everybody, but I'll go ahead and say it. My personal plan, how I'm playing this market, all of my stuff that I bought down in here, right? My Bitcoin, my Ethereum, XRP, Solana, things like that, like the top 5 coins and altcoins, and really it's mainly Bitcoin and Ethereum heavy anyways, but I don't have exposure to mid caps. I don't have exposure to even like a Chainlink or a Doge or a Cardano. Just really strong stuff that actually I've gotten lucky, it's outperformed this cycle. So I have a little bit of wiggle room on that stuff. What I will say is I'm willing to hold through some sort of lower before a retest comes in. I'm willing to hold out for a reclaim, whatever is destined to happen. But if we don't get the reclaim this week, I'm holding out for that bounce to exit those coins that I kind of mentioned, stuff that hasn't outperformed from bear market bottom. Recent buys, right? For me, some of my recent buys are like mid caps and laggards that I've talked about. I don't want to give examples of them just in case we do reclaim. That's kind of the secret sauce of the whole thing. But things that I have bought recently that typically, if we are going to go into a bear market, dump harder than Bitcoin, don't recover as fast as Bitcoin, and can lead for years on end if we are in some sort of bear market situation. So if we don't get the reclaim, I am good to just let go of those. All right. Just letting go. All right. I'll continue to hold those majors until one of 2 things happen. What we have down here, right, is our simple moving average. This is the 21-month simple moving average. And you can see every time we've lost this, right, it's been pre-capitulation. You see in here, even when we lose this level, we are going into the final capitulation phase of the bear market, which is weird to say because it's really not that far away. It's only like 8% away. But if we do lose this level on the weekly time frame, if we do lose this, like if we, let's say we don't reclaim, we backtest. Here, let me draw this one. I'll draw the worst case scenario. I'll say we come down here, we bounce, right? I exit my newer buys and my laggards and some of my lesser than altcoins, right? Exit in right there, given that we don't get the reclaim. And if we have to chop on here for a while, I'll sit around and watch. I'll sit around and maybe hope and pray that we'll monitor their dynamics or something. Maybe those are still playing out, whatever have you, right? And this is just because I'm allocated from much, much lower. But as soon as we close below this on the weekly time frame, that's when I would exit those coins, looking to get back in, again, pointing to, hey, we're just before some sort of capitulation phase here. And I don't know how long any of this is going to take, but at the same time, there's a little bit of a shot clock on the situation, if I might say so. We'll look at the MACD here, looking at the monthly. This is going to confirm in 2 weeks. So we have 2 weeks to fix this situation on the monthly MACD. Every time this has crossed, we can see where we're at, well within a bear market, much deeper than I think a lot of people would expect if they are or have been calling for a bear market. All right, I hope that was detailed enough to at least get you to understand like how you need to think about the market currently, what the risks are, what the situation is. But I kind of want to go through a little exercise, and let's just pretend as if, I'm going to pretend as if I'm you, and I'm just going to talk you through each of these scenarios and how they could play out and things like that. I had this call with clients yesterday, so they have this explained to them, just like you guys will have it to you. But I also think it'll be a good follow up for them based on, it's just a lot of stuff to manage and think about at the same time, and you have to be relatively quick on your feet with it. Scenario one, right? Not waiting for confirmation, just letting go. What do you protect yourself against, right? More downside, if you're heavily exposed into altcoins, or you're just wanting, a quick buck, or you don't believe in like the long-term vision, or you don't want to stick around for next cycle, or just a wide variety of things. If it's too much emotionally for you, then maybe this is the way to go. And again, if you do see at the end of this week, we have reclaimed, right? There might be some sort of opportunity to hop back in here for you. All right, option 2, waiting for the reclaim. What does this open you up to if you wait for the reclaim? You can have God knows how much downside. There's always risk, right? There's always downside risk. So it doesn't have to bounce here, even though likely spot for it to bounce here. Again, 21 simple moving average on the monthly time frame, right? But what do we open ourselves up to? Obviously, the downside of this. Okay, and if we are going to wait for a reclaim, maybe a retest earlier on in the week or something like that. Sorry, this is 2 different scenarios. Let's just go with this. All right, so maybe you have to hold through this little bounce to then potentially the exit the market, whatever coins. That's just my situation that I'm exiting like majors and laggards differently, but you kind of have to do and figure out what's best for you based on your exposure. But you do, if you are going to wait for a reclaim, you do have to be able to hold through a little bit of downside before potentially getting a bounce or back test to exit. What's another possibility on a reclaim is like maybe we just go reclaim it this week. And if it's going to play out like I mentioned with MACD, honestly, it's going to happen fast. We have like 13 days to not confirm the monthly cross on the MACD, which if we do, I'm not really particularly sure how that's going to play out, but it is just the reality of the situation. So I think that kind of covers both scenarios. I'll go over again how I'm kind of playing it, right? Currently in its current state, I'm waiting for a reclaim. If we get it, awesome. Nothing changes for me. We continue on like normal. If that does happen, it's very likely that like a lot of the dynamics that we've seen wanted to play out continue to play out like normal, and we just kind of start talking about the same thing and looking for blow off tops in the cycle and things like that. The alternative option is this week we dump, and I'm okay to hold through that, right? At some point, likely to get a bounce, whether it does retest 98K or not, yet to be determined. At this zone, I'm exiting my lagging coins and my fresh buys and things like that. I'm willing to stick around a little bit longer on my majors, but if we get that monthly MACD cross, if we close below this as well, I'm looking for, again, this has marked capitulation territory, so I'd likely fully exit the market at that point, and probably looking to almost immediately start buying, getting back into Bitcoin, scaling in, things like that, because it has marked pre-capitulation territory. So there's a lot of like weird things happening right now. I think one, just having the shot at a reclaim and like this cycle just continuing on like normal is a full possibility that I think a lot of people wouldn't expect. Even if we are in a bear market, right, from a time perspective, we're not super far, right? Let's see. We're about This is 70 days of, 365 days. We're about like 45 days in right now from where the top would have been, 45, 46, 47, somewhere in there. So a little bit less than like what we've seen previous cycles, way less than what we've seen right here. This is pointing to where we got the monthly MACD crosses, or this is where SI on the weekly tapped 40 for the first time in a bear market. One of those two, I forget. The point is, we could be a lot further along on this thing than people think. And if we aren't to get a reclaim, it is likely that we do get some sort of like chop on here to kind of just drive people crazy. This ultimately, right, the monthly MACD, bunch of different stuff like that is going to eventually catch up to us. Maybe even closing under this EMA here will catch up to us at that point. As we've seen, multiple times. We can see in there, and we can see in there. You're kind of just in this chopping phase, waiting around for capitulation, and then that capitulation moment typically shows up when you lose this EMA in here. So something that I think is kind of peculiar again is like, if we chop on here for a month and a half, something like that, we likely exited on a retest and monthly MACD cross before, maybe we even got capitulation on this chart or close underneath the EMA. But when the, capitulation does come in, there's really not that much left to the bear market. If we are going to chill around this level, just grab this fractal. And this is not a testament to how low it can or will go. I think that's going to be a little bit different of a question, or we'll go about it a little bit differently. But even just lining things up something like this, you can see just go through the phases. Once you get through, start closing below this level after that kind of chop phase ensues, right? It's pretty much straight down into the capitulation. Again, this doesn't have to be a certain length. It can show up wherever. But the point is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 capitulation waves would pretty much be left for the bear market if we were to get something similar as last cycle. And that's a whole different set of questions and things to monitor when you're looking for bear market bottoms and things like that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But just kind of something interesting to think about and to look out for. And again, even if this is the beginning of the bear market, and we're gonna stick it out for the reclaims and things like that. But if it is meant to be a bear market, we're really not that far off from when the kind of capitulation already comes in, which is a really odd to me in a way. Anyways, I think we will wrap it up there. I know people will have a lot of comments and questions about this video. I'm more than happy to help you guys with anything that I can to help you guys out. So just let me know in the comments what I can do to offer a little bit of help. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Make sure you check out my other videos. It kind of adds context to everything that we talked about here today. But I'll see you in the next one. Peace.